Hello again, Brian from MCW Modelworks. So I've already gone through and shown you how to black out your window beds, the rear package tray, tape that all off and black it all out. So the next step is to go ahead and put a gloss clear coat on the entire body. At least that's what I'm doing. So that's the next step. So I'm going to be using MCW's gloss clear, number 1017. So that's this one here. And now you have two options. You can go with the small bottle, or you can get a larger, I forget, as 8 ounce. I think it's 8 ounce, maybe a quart, something like that. I haven't figured that out yet. But anyway, it's available in two different sizes. I get the larger size because I'm doing a lot more body, so I tend to get one or two of those at a time. It's more cost effective. But you can get the little bottles. Now, if you're clearing one body, I find that sometimes one whole body could take two of these, depending on the size of the cup on your airbrush, the pressure, how much air pressure, how much paint's coming out, that kind of thing. So the clear works pretty well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I do it and the processes as far as that goes. And generally what I'll do is I'll do 2 light coats and let them flash dry in between, let them dry for a couple minutes. And then I'll go back and hit the body. Once that's tacked up, I've gotten like two light coats on, then I'll go back and I'll do a 1 to 2 heavy coats. I'm anticipating doing 2 heavy coats, but it may be less. So let's get started with that and we'll move on to the next step. So I'm getting ready to go ahead and clear that City Chevrolet 46 Lumina body, and I've already loaded up my clear into the airbrush, and I've made sure that the cup is full. So we've got full cup in there, so that way as we go and get started, we don't have to worry about running out right off the initial bat. And the clear we're using is MCW's Gloss Clear Lacquer 1017. So that is the clear we're using. On the clear, I definitely recommend getting the larger bottles because you're going to run through it. Usually I'll use two of the smaller bottles. If you get their small bottle, I believe it's 2 ounces. If you get this one, it's you're going to run through 2 of these to clear a bottle, more than likely, to get enough coverage and coats on. So just keep that in mind that probably should invest in the larger one, but 2 small ones will definitely get one body if you're not planning on doing multiple ones. Now what I'm going to do is I've kept one of the spoons from doing the test sprays on the green, and I'm going to use that as my test for the clear. Make sure that I've got all my particles coming out of already out of the gun from spraying the black from earlier. And had a couple of little spits of black off of there, but looks like it has cleared it out. You try to clear out the gun as much as possible, but it tends to always spit something. So it's good to do a test before you spray the actual body or hood or whatever. So I'm going to start with the hood, then I'm going to do the body, and then in between each spray I'm going to put it in the dryer to let it dry. So once we spray it, then we'll go ahead and put it in the dryer and let it sit for a few minutes before we go hitting another coat. So I've got the hood ready, body ready, and I'm going to get the spray. I've just gotten finished putting 2 light coats on, very light, so that way it can start to tack up. I did that on the hood and the body. So now what I'm going to do is, after waiting a few minutes, the lacquer tends to flash dry pretty quick, so you can go back and hit that with a heavier coat a lot quicker. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this now with a heavy coat. So what we're going to do is do probably 2 heavy coats with roughly 10 minutes in between, somewhere in there. Well, how you doing? Brian again from MCW Modelworks. So we've gone through and I showed you clearing the body, and it ended up only taking 1 heavy coat. I did do 2 light coats, 2 to 3 light coats on there, but it ended up only taking 1 heavy coat. And if you notice while I'm spraying, you'll see from the video, I tend to work from the bottom up. So some of my mistakes early on, when clearing the bodies, is I would spray from top to bottom, and then what would happen is I'd end up with dry patches at the bottom because I focused so much on not turning the body and rotating it enough to get heavy coverage at the bottom. So then I didn't get enough clear, and I ended up with dry patches, and then if you wet sand it, try to buff it out, it doesn't work because you don't have enough clear there. So I like to start at the bottom, try to cover the bottom of the sides, and then the rear bumper and the nose and front fascia, and try to cover all that first. Once that's all cleared and I feel like I've got a decent coat on there, then I work my way to the top. The one thing I have found with the gloss clear lacquer and spraying it with an airbrush is it does flash dry very fast. So you'll end up with dry patches if you don't put on enough clear in a short period of time. You don't want to go too fast and too heavy, because then you end up with it running and getting sags in the clear, and then that's more you got to wet sand out and fix, and then you're trying to use the air pressure to move the paint back up so it doesn't, create these big sags and runs. So try to do is get those 2 light coats on and then go with a heavy coat. Now that is where I stress that that large cup on the airbrush that I'm using. That's key to making sure that you almost have a nice wet finish all the way around where it's nice and shiny. Because if you don't, and you leave it where you have a smaller cup, then you run out of clear quicker, and then you have to refill it. And then what happens is, because you have to refill it, that clear has dried so fast that now you have to put another full coat all the way around. So I can't stress enough that when you do the MCW clear, the gloss clear, and you're doing it, running it through an airbrush, make sure you have a large enough cup to carry enough, more than enough clear, so that way you don't run into those dry patches and having to go in between that spraying process and filling that cup back up. Because if you've got that little cup on that airbrush and you run out of clear coat before you get to put a full nice wet coat on everything, you're not going to have even coverage, and it's going to be harder to wet sand it and buff it out and make it clear, make it nice and shiny. So just make sure you got a big enough cup on that airbrush, and you should turn out with a pretty good coverage. So we're going to let that sit and dry. I'm not going to touch it for probably the rest of the day, and let it sit and air dry in the air dryer, which is, get this moved over here, which is over there. I'm going to let that sit and air dry in there, and it's got its we're going to let that sit and air dry, and then we'll come back to it tomorrow and see what it looks like. And then it may need a wet sand and a buff, and she should be ready for decals after that. So thanks for watching. I hope I've been informative on some of the paints and the products that I use, and maybe give you a hand on clear coating your bodies and painting your bodies. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.